Chapter 1. The night before everything changed. Close your eyes and imagine this. You're lying in bed tonight, safe and comfortable, while outside your window lies a world that has existed for thousands of years. Cities, roads, familiar coastlines. But what if I told you that this world you know, this entire version of human civilization, might actually be the second or even third attempt at human greatness? What if, long before the first pyramid was ever conceived, long before the ancient Sumerians carved their first cuneiform tablet, there existed civilizations so advanced, so magnificent, that their very existence would rewrite everything we think we know about our past? Tonight, as you drift into peaceful sleep, let me take you on a journey to a time when the world looked nothing like it does today. Picture this. 20,000 years ago, the Earth was a completely different planet. Imagine if someone could transport you back in time, and as your eyes opened, you'd find yourself standing not on familiar ground, but on vast expanses of land that today lie hundreds of feet beneath the ocean waves. The coastlines you know, the beaches where you've walked, the harbors where ships dock. None of them existed where they are today. But here's where it gets truly fascinating, and why you might want to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what I'm about to share with you will challenge everything you thought you knew about human history. During the last ice age, enormous sheets of ice, some over 3,000 feet thick, covered much of North America and Europe. So much water was locked up in these massive glaciers that the ocean levels were more than 400 feet lower than they are today. Think about that for a moment. 400 feet lower. That means entire continents of land, areas larger than modern countries, were completely exposed and dry. Where today we see nothing but open ocean, our ancestors might have built cities, developed trade routes, and created civilizations that would make our modern achievements look modest by comparison. And here's the question that should make you pause and think. If you were an advanced civilization 20,000 years ago, where would you build your cities, trade routes spanning continents, and knowledge being shared across what we now think of as impossible distances? The very stage was set for human achievement on a scale we've never even considered. And here's what's going to keep you listening until the very end of this story. What happened to all of this? Where did it go? Because something catastrophic occurred at the end of the Ice Age that changed everything. And the evidence of what might have been the greatest loss in human history is hidden in places we're only just beginning to explore. As you settle in for the next 2 hours, prepare yourself for a journey that will take you beneath the oceans, into the myths and legends that might not be myths at all, and toward a conclusion that could change how you see the entire story of human civilization. Because what if the rise and fall of civilizations isn't just something that happened in recorded history? What if it's a cycle that's been repeating for far longer than we ever imagined? Coming up next, we'll dive deep beneath the waves to explore the drowned world that might hold the remains of humanity's forgotten golden age. But first, I have to ask you something that might sound impossible. What if the lost civilization of Atlantis wasn't just a story? Chapter 2. When Oceans Swallowed Empires. Now that you're settling in, let me paint you a picture so vivid you'll feel like you're standing there yourself. Imagine you're a time traveler, and you've just arrived at the end of the last ice age, around 11,600 years ago. You're standing on what will one day become the Atlantic Ocean floor. But right now, it's dry land stretching to the horizon. All around you, you see something that shouldn't exist, according to everything we've been taught about human history. cities. Not simple villages or hunting camps, but actual cities, with stone buildings, harbors full of boats, and people engaged in trade, astronomy, and engineering. You see pyramids that dwarf those of Egypt, libraries filled with knowledge, and technologies that work in harmony with nature. But then, something terrible begins to happen. The ice caps are melting faster than anyone expected. Nothing short of apocalyptic. Imagine if, in your lifetime, you watched New York, London, and Tokyo slowly disappear beneath the waves. Imagine if all the world's greatest cities, its centers of learning and culture, were swallowed by the ocean. What would survive? What would be left for future archaeologists to find? This is where the story gets both fascinating and frustrating. You see, we've been looking for evidence of ancient civilizations in all the wrong places. We've been digging on dry land, in caves and on mountains, because that's where we can dig. But if advanced Ice Age civilizations existed, their remains aren't on dry land. They're on the ocean floor, buried under hundreds of feet of water and thousands of years of sediment. But here's where it gets controversial, and I really want to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. Some researchers argue that we're not just missing evidence, we're actively ignoring it. Off the coast of India, near the ancient city of Dwarka, divers have found what appear to be massive stone structures underwater. Walls, streets, even what might be buildings, all lying beneath the waves. In Japan, there's the Yonaguni Monument, enormous stone formations that some researchers believe show clear signs of human construction. Straight edges, right angles, and what appear to be ceremonial platforms, all now submerged. The controversy? Mainstream archaeology insists these are natural formations, but the geometric precision is so exact that it challenges our understanding of what nature can create by chance. And here's what might blow your mind. In the Mediterranean, we found the remains of Pavlopetri in Greece, an entire Bronze Age city preserved underwater. If a city from just 4,000 years ago can survive beneath the waves, what about cities from 15,000 or 20,000 years ago? The problem is scale. The ocean is vast, and we've explored less than 5% of the seafloor in any detail. We've mapped more of the surface of Mars than we have of our own ocean floor. Every year, new underwater discoveries are made, but they're just glimpses of what might be a much larger story. But let me share something with you that might want you to imagine you're in the Royal Ottoman Navy in 1513, and you're an admiral named Piri Reis. You're creating a map of the known world, but you're not just using your own knowledge. You're combining information from dozens of older maps, some of which you claim date back to the time of Alexander the Great and beyond. When you finish your map, something extraordinary emerges. Not only does it show the coastlines of the Americas with remarkable accuracy, this is just 21 years after Columbus, but it also appears to show the coastline of Antarctica. Now here's the problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, more than 300 years later. But wait, it gets even more mysterious. The Antarctic coastline shown on the Piri Reis map doesn't match the ice-covered continent we know today. Instead, it appears to show Antarctica as it might look without its ice sheet, revealing the actual land beneath miles of ice that wouldn't be mapped by modern science until the 1950s, using ground-penetrating radar. If you're finding this as mind-bending as I am, please take a moment to subscribe, because we're just scratching the surface of this mystery. Now, skeptics have argued that this is all just coincidence, that the map shows random land masses that happen to look like Antarctica. But here's what they can't explain. Piri Reis himself wrote notes on his map, stating that he used about 20 charts and Mappae Mundi, including a map drawn by Columbus. So the question becomes, where did those older maps come from? How could cartographers from centuries past have knowledge of coastlines that were supposedly unknown? Either we're looking at the most extraordinary series of coincidences in the history of map making, or these charts preserve geographical knowledge from a time when the world looked very different than it does today. And the Piri Reis map isn't alone. There's the Orontius Phineus map from 1531, which also shows an ice-free Antarctica, with rivers, mountains and coastlines. The Mercator map of 1569 shows similar features. How is it possible that multiple map makers, working independently, all included details of a continent that was supposedly unknown? Here's where they raise uncomfortable questions about the continuity of human knowledge. What if the Renaissance cartographers weren't creating new maps, but copying and combining far older ones? What if the age of exploration was actually an age of rediscovery, as European navigators found lands that had been visited and mapped long before? Consider this. The maps show not just Antarctica, but also details of other coastlines with remarkable accuracy. The Caribbean islands, the South American coast, even the Mediterranean, all depicted with a precision that suggests systematic observation and measurement. This level of accuracy typically requires not just one voyage, but many expeditions over extended periods. And here's what might be the most intriguing aspect of all. The maps appear to use advanced mathematical projections. The Piri Reis map, for example, uses a projection that accounts for the curvature of the Earth in a way that suggests sophisticated understanding of geography. This wasn't common knowledge in 1513. So what do you think? Is it possible that these maps preserve knowledge from a lost maritime civilization? Could Ice Age seafarers have charted the world's coastlines thousands of years before the official age of exploration? Or are we reading too much into what might simply be educated guesswork and artistic interpretation? As you consider these questions, let me share with you another piece of this puzzle that's even more controversial. Artifacts that appear to be far more advanced than anything we'd expect from their supposed time periods. Tools and technologies that seem to defy our understanding of human progress. Chapter 4: Tools that defy time itself. What I'm about to share with you might fundamentally change how you think about human technological development. But before I do, I want you to consider something that happened in 1901 off the coast of Greece. Divers exploring an ancient shipwreck discovered what looked like a corroded lump of bronze. For decades, it sat in a museum, largely ignored. Then, scientists finally examined it closely. Using X-rays and CT scans, they discovered something that they should be according to our timeline of human development. Now, I want to be clear. Many of these discoveries are disputed, and I'm not claiming they definitively prove anything. But they do raise fascinating questions about what we might not know about our past. Take, for example, the mysterious metallic spirals found in the Ural Mountains of Russia. These tiny coil-shaped objects, some no bigger than a hair, were discovered in deposits that some researchers claim are tens of thousands of years old. They show signs of precise manufacturing, uniform spirals with consistent dimensions that would be difficult to create even with modern technology. Skeptics argue that these spirals are natural formations or contamination from modern drilling equipment. But supporters point out that they were found at different depths in undisturbed geological layers, and their construction appears too regular to be natural. Then there are the stone carvings found throughout South America that depict what appear to be mechanical devices. In some cases, these carvings show objects that look remarkably like gears, pistons, and other machine parts. The conventional explanation is that these are artistic interpretations of natural objects or spiritual symbols. But what if they're literal representations of technologies that once existed? Here's where it gets really controversial, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. In various locations around the world, researchers have found evidence of precise stone cutting that seems to exceed the capabilities of the tools available at the time. In Egypt, granite blocks show cuts so straight and clean that they appear almost machine-made. In Peru, massive stones are fitted together with joints so precise that you can't slip a piece of paper between them. The official explanation is human ingenuity, patience, and sophisticated techniques using available materials like copper tools and abrasive sands. But some researchers argue that the precision suggests technologies we haven't accounted for. Now, I want to emphasize something important here. When we talk about advanced Ice Age technologies, we're not necessarily talking about electronics or modern machinery. An advanced civilization 20,000 years ago might have developed along completely different technological paths. They might have mastered techniques in astronomy. The technology was different from ours, based on materials and methods that time has erased. But here's what really challenges our assumptions. Even the technologies we do know about from the ancient world often seem to appear suddenly, without clear developmental predecessors. Writing systems, mathematical concepts, architectural techniques. They often emerge in the historical record as if they were rediscovered, rather than invented for the first time. What if much of human technological development isn't linear progress, but cycles of discovery, loss, and rediscovery? What if the tools that seem to defy time are actually echoes of older knowledge, preserved imperfectly and reinterpreted by later cultures? As we delve deeper into this mystery, we encounter perhaps the biggest challenge of all, the problem of missing evidence. Why, if advanced civilizations existed, is the evidence so scarce? The answer might lie in understanding just how efficiently the Earth erases traces of the past. Chapter 5. The Great Silence of Missing Evidence. Let me ask you to conduct a thought experiment that might change everything you think about archaeological evidence. Imagine that our entire modern civilization, every city, every highway, every monument, suddenly vanished tomorrow, and the Earth was left to reclaim it naturally. How long do you think it would take for all traces of our existence to disappear? Most people guess thousands of years, but the reality might shock you. Within just 50 years without maintenance, most wooden structures would decay. Within 100 years, steel and concrete buildings would begin to crumble significantly. Within 500 years, most of our cities would be overgrown ruins. And within 10,000 years, still just half the time since the end of the Ice Age, virtually all trace of our technological civilization would be gone, except perhaps for some scattered stone monuments and maybe Mount Rushmore. Now consider this. If our advanced civilization can be erased in 10,000 years, what about a civilization from 20,000 years ago? What would survive? This is what archaeologists call the preservation problem, and it's one of the biggest challenges in understanding the deep past. But here's where it gets even more complicated. And this is something that might make you want to share. They choose river deltas, coastal plains, and sheltered bays. During the Ice Age, all of these prime locations were along coastlines that are now deep beneath the ocean. This means that when we look at Ice Age archaeology, we're seeing only the peripheral settlements, the equivalent of finding a few rural farming communities and concluding that no major cities ever existed. The real centers of civilization, if they existed, are beyond our reach beneath miles of water and sediment. But even on land, the preservation problem is more severe than most people realize. Consider what materials would survive from an Ice Age civilization. Stone monuments might endure, but only if they were built on a massive scale and in geologically stable areas. Metal tools would corrode away completely. Wooden structures, textiles, paper or parchment records, and most organic technologies would vanish without a trace. This creates what researchers call preservation bias. We only see the most durable fragments of ancient life, not the full picture. It's like trying to understand our modern world by examining only the stone foundations of buildings and a few metal artifacts, with no access to books, computers, or any other evidence of our intellectual achievements. Here's another factor that might blow your mind. Even stone structures can disappear completely. Earthquakes can topple monuments. Rivers can change course and erode away entire cities. Glacial activity can grind massive stones to powder, and, perhaps most importantly, later civilizations often reuse ancient building materials, dismantling older structures to build new ones. We see this throughout history. The pyramids of Egypt were once covered in smooth limestone casing stones that made them shine like mirrors in the sunlight. Where are those stones now? They were removed over centuries to build houses and mosques in nearby Cairo. If this kind of recycling happened to monuments we know about, imagine how many earlier structures might have been completely quarried away for later construction projects. And then there's the scale problem. The Earth is enormous, and we've excavated only a tiny fraction of its surface. Most archaeological sites are discovered by accident, by farmers ploughing fields, construction workers digging foundations, or natural erosion exposed. Question about absence of evidence versus evidence of absence. Just because we haven't found clear proof of Ice Age civilizations doesn't mean they didn't exist. It might simply mean that the evidence is hidden in places we can't access, made from materials that don't survive, or scattered across regions we haven't systematically explored. But what if some survivors did carry fragments of their knowledge forward? What if the great cataclysm that ended the Ice Age didn't destroy everything, but scattered the remnants of advanced civilizations across the globe? That possibility leads us to one of the most fascinating aspects of this mystery: the stories that survivors might have told. Chapter 6. Survivors of the Ancient Cataclysm. Now I want you to imagine something that might sound like science fiction, but which is actually supported by geological evidence. Picture the Earth 12,900 years ago. The Ice Age is ending. The planet is warming, and human civilizations that might have thrived during the stable Ice Age climate are adapting to a changing world. Then, suddenly, everything goes wrong. Without warning, temperatures plummet back to near glacial levels. This isn't a gradual change, it's catastrophically fast. Within just a few years, the warming trend reverses, and the world enters a period of intense cold that lasts for over 1,000 years. Scientists call this period the Younger Dryas, and it remains one of the greatest mysteries in climate science. But here's what makes this event so significant for our story, and why you might want to hit that subscribe button to hear more about this incredible mystery. The Younger Dryas wasn't just cold. It was accompanied by massive floods, widespread fires, and the extinction of numerous large animal species. Something dramatic happened to Earth during this period, and it might have been the final blow to any advanced civilizations that had survived the gradual changes of the Ice Age. What caused the Younger Dryas? The evidence is still debated, but several theories emerge. Some scientists believe it was caused by a massive release of glacial meltwater that disrupted ocean currents. Others point to evidence of a possible cosmic impact, a comet or asteroid, whatever came after. Now, imagine you're a member of an advanced Ice Age civilization when this catastrophe strikes. First, your coastal cities are being gradually swallowed by rising seas as the ice caps melt. Then, suddenly, cosmic fire rains from the sky. Massive floods sweep across the continents, and the world plunges back into a devastating cold period that lasts for generations. What would you do? How would you survive? More importantly, what would happen to your knowledge, your technologies, and your cultural achievements? The logical response would be to flee to higher ground, to gather whatever knowledge and resources you could carry, and to seek refuge wherever possible. Some survivors might make it to mountain caves. Others might build boats and seek safety on islands or distant shores. The lucky few might preserve fragments of their civilization's knowledge, perhaps in the form of tools, astronomical observations, or architectural techniques. But here's what's absolutely fascinating. Around the world, indigenous cultures preserve flood myths that describe exactly this kind of catastrophe. Nearly every ancient civilization has stories of a great deluge that destroyed an earlier world, leaving only a few survivors to rebuild. For centuries, these were dismissed as purely symbolic or religious narratives. But what if they're not symbols? What if they're cultural memories of real events, passed down through oral tradition for thousands of years? The details are remarkably consistent across cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. A great flood destroys the world. Fire falls from the sky. Only a few people survive, often by seeking refuge on mountains or in boats. These survivors then become the founders of new civilizations. Aboriginal traditions in Australia describe coastlines and islands that match geological reconstructions of what the continent looked like when sea levels were much lower, over 10,000 years ago. Native American stories speak of fire from the sky and great floods that reshaped the landscape. Polynesian traditions tell of lost lands swallowed by the sea. These aren't just stories. They might be the last living record of humanity's greatest catastrophe. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. If survivors of Ice Age civilizations did scatter across the globe, carrying fragments of advanced knowledge with them, we might expect to see certain patterns in how later civilizations develop. Global distribution of certain technologies and symbols that appear far earlier than they should, according to conventional timelines. Could these be the fingerprints of survivor populations, carrying the remnants of Ice Age knowledge into the post-cataclysm world? As we explore this possibility, we need to examine one of the most famous survivor stories of all, a tale that has captivated human imagination for over 2,000 years, but which might contain more truth than anyone ever suspected. Chapter 7: The Younger Dryas Mystery. Let me take you back to a conversation that took place in ancient Athens around 360 BCE. The great philosopher Plato is telling a story he claims to have heard from Egyptian priests, who in turn claim to have preserved it in their most ancient records. It's the story of Atlantis, a powerful island civilization that existed 9,000 years before Plato's time, which would place it right at the end of the Ice Age. According to Plato's account, Atlantis was a maritime empire with advanced technology, sophisticated government, and influence over much of the known world. But in a single day and night of catastrophic earthquakes and floods, the entire civilization disappeared beneath the waves, leaving no trace behind. For over 2,000 years, people have argued about whether Atlantis was real or just a philosophical allegory. But here's what makes this story so compelling in light of everything we've discovered. The timeline Plato gives, 9,000 years before his time, corresponds almost exactly with the Younger Dryas period and the final melting of the Ice Age glaciers. Now, I want you to consider something that might seem controversial, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments. What if Plato wasn't creating a fictional story, but preserving a cultural memory of real events? What if the Egyptian priests really did maintain records of a great civilization that was destroyed by rising seas and natural catastrophe at the end of the Ice Age? The details in Plato's account are specific enough to be intriguing. He places Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, suggesting it was in the Atlantic Ocean. He describes it as a large island with a sophisticated harbor system, advanced agriculture, and impressive architecture. Most significantly, he attributes its destruction to Earth's civilization. The Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, who survived a world-destroying flood. The Hebrew Bible describes Noah's flood. Hindu texts speak of a great deluge that ended a previous age of humanity. Greek myths tell of Deucalion's flood. These stories appear in cultures across the globe, many of which supposedly had no contact with each other. The consistency of the flood narrative across such diverse traditions suggests that it might be based on shared memory of actual events rather than independent invention. And the geological evidence supports the possibility of catastrophic flooding at the end of the Ice Age. We know that massive glacial lakes burst through their ice dams, sending walls of water across vast areas. We know that sea levels rose rapidly during certain periods, potentially flooding coastal areas in a matter of decades. We know that the melting of ice sheets caused significant geological instability. But here's what might be the most compelling aspect of the Atlantis story. Plato claims that Egyptian priests told him their records showed that Atlantis had attempted to conquer the Mediterranean region, but was defeated by ancient Athens. If true, this would mean that there was contact between advanced Ice Age civilizations and the early peoples of the Mediterranean. Could this explain some of the mysterious aspects of early Mediterranean cultures? The sudden appearance of advanced astronomical knowledge, the sophisticated understanding of mathematics and engineering that seems to emerge without clear predecessors, the architectural techniques that appear fully developed rather than showing gradual evolution. Some researchers have suggested that survivors of Atlantis, or whatever Ice Age civilization it represents, might have become the gods or culture heroes remembered in various mythologies. Beings who appeared with advanced knowledge and taught primitive peoples the arts of civilization. In this interpretation, mythology isn't just storytelling, but cultural memory of contact with more advanced peoples. Now, I want to be clear that this is highly speculative. There's no definitive proof that Atlantis existed as Plato described it. But the correlation between his timeline, the geological evidence of end Ice Age catastrophes, world. What I'm about to share with you challenges one of the most fundamental assumptions about human development, and it's supported by evidence so solid that it's forcing archaeologists to rewrite their textbooks. For decades, we were taught that monumental architecture, the building of massive stone structures, only became possible after humans developed agriculture, settled into cities, and created complex social hierarchies. The logic seemed sound. Only farming societies could produce enough surplus food to free up the labor needed for large construction projects. Only settled communities could coordinate the long-term planning required for monumental buildings. Only complex civilizations could organize the hundreds of workers needed to quarry, transport, and arrange massive stones. Then, in the 1990s, archaeologists uncovered something in southeastern Turkey that shattered this neat timeline. At a site called Göbekli Tepe, they found enormous stone circles with carved pillars, some weighing more than 10 tons. The site was clearly built by a sophisticated society with advanced knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and symbolic art. But here's what made this discovery so revolutionary. Göbekli Tepe was built around 11,000 years ago, before agriculture, before pottery, before written language, even before the wheel. It was constructed by hunter-gatherers during the period immediately following the Younger Dryas catastrophe. Everything we thought we knew about the capabilities of Ice Age peoples was suddenly called into question. And Göbekli Tepe isn't alone. Across the globe, archaeologists are finding evidence of sophisticated construction projects that push back the timeline of human achievement. At Karahan Tepe, also in Turkey, similar stone circles are being uncovered. At sites across the Mediterranean, megalithic structures are being redated to earlier and earlier periods. But here's where it gets really intriguing, and I think this might blow your mind. These monuments don't appear to have been built from scratch by societies that were just learning construction. Instead, they show evidence of mature building traditions, techniques and knowledge that appear fully developed rather than experimental. This suggests that the knowledge needed to build these monuments existed before they were constructed. The question is, where did this interpretation fits with some intriguing patterns in the global distribution of megalithic sites? Similar construction techniques appear in widely separated locations at roughly the same time period. Massive stones fitted together with precision, astronomical alignments built into the structures, symbolic carvings that suggest shared meaning across cultures. In Britain, the megalithic tradition includes not just Stonehenge, but hundreds of stone circles, burial chambers, and standing stones scattered across the landscape. In France, the alignments at Karnak stretch for miles, thousands of standing stones arranged in precise rows. In Malta, underground temples show sophisticated understanding of acoustics and astronomy. These sites don't just represent local construction projects. They suggest coordinated knowledge sharing across vast distances. But how could hunter-gatherer societies maintain such extensive networks of communication and cultural exchange? Unless they were inheriting and adapting knowledge from earlier, more connected civilizations. And here's what might be the most compelling evidence of all. Many of these megalithic sites show signs of multiple construction phases. The oldest layers often display the most sophisticated techniques, while later additions sometimes show declining skill levels. This is the opposite of what we'd expect if these were societies developing their construction abilities over time. Instead, it looks like societies with advanced knowledge were gradually losing their skills, as if they were working from incomplete instructions, trying to recreate techniques they didn't fully understand anymore. But there's another type of evidence that might preserve voices from the drowned world. Oral traditions that have been passed down for thousands of years. Among Aboriginal Australians, there are songlines and stories that appear to preserve geographical knowledge from when sea levels were much lower. These traditions describe islands, coastlines, and land bridges that haven't existed since the end of the Ice Age. Similarly, Polynesian navigation traditions preserve knowledge of ocean currents, star positions, and island locations that allows navigators to cross thousands of miles of open ocean without instruments. This knowledge is passed down through oral tradition and practical training, maintaining its accuracy across generations. If such precise knowledge can be preserved orally, I want to take you on a journey to some of the most mysterious construction sites on Earth, places where massive stones were shaped, moved, and fitted together with a precision that challenges our understanding of ancient capabilities. But here's what makes these sites truly extraordinary. Many of them show signs of unfinished work, as if the builders suddenly stopped in the middle of their projects and never returned. At Baalbek in Lebanon, there's a limestone block called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. It measures over 70 feet long and weighs an estimated 1,000 tons, making it one of the largest quarried stones in the world. But here's the mystery. It lies partially cut from the quarry bed, as if the workers simply abandoned it mid-process. Nearby, even larger blocks weighing up to 1,600 tons were somehow incorporated into ancient temple foundations, raising profound questions about the capabilities of their builders. In Peru, at Ollantaytambo, Massive stone blocks were quarried from a mountainside several miles away and transported across rivers and valleys. Some of these stones remain scattered along the route, as if a great construction project was suddenly interrupted. The precision of the stonework is extraordinary. Blocks fitted together so perfectly that you can't insert a knife blade between them. But perhaps most intriguingly, at Sacsayhuaman near Cusco, there are stones that appear to have been abandoned mid-cutting. Some blocks show evidence of advanced shaping techniques, while others lie rough-hewn, as if work stopped suddenly before completion. What could cause such massive construction projects to be abandoned? The scale of these undertakings suggests societies with enormous organizational capabilities, advanced engineering knowledge, and the confidence that comes from successful experience. You don't attempt to move 1,000-ton stones unless you know you can do it. Yet something interrupted these projects so dramatically that they were never resumed. The question is, what? If we consider these unfinished projects in the context of Ice Age civilizations, a pattern begins to emerge. What if these sites represent not the beginnings of monumental construction, but attempts to preserve or recreate knowledge from earlier civilizations? What if the abandoned projects mark the moment when that knowledge was finally lost? Here's where the story gets even more intriguing. Trying to recreate techniques they didn't fully understand, as if they were following instructions from a tradition that was already partially lost. The precision of the stonework at these sites continues to puzzle engineers today. At Sacsayhuaman, stones weighing hundreds of tons are fitted together in complex, interlocking patterns. The surfaces are smooth, the joints are perfect, and the overall construction shows understanding of principles that wouldn't be formalized in engineering until much later. Some researchers have suggested that these techniques required tools and methods more advanced than what we associate with ancient civilizations. But what if the tools and methods weren't more advanced, just different? What if Ice Age civilizations developed along technological paths that left little archaeological trace? Consider that most human technology throughout history has been organic. Wood, leather, plant fibers, and even softer metals decay quickly, leaving no evidence for future archaeologists. A civilization could have developed sophisticated techniques using materials that simply don't survive in the archaeological record. But there's another possibility that's even more intriguing. What if some of these sites are much older than we think? What if the unfinished projects date not to a few thousand years ago, but to the end of the Ice Age itself? What if they represent the final attempts of Ice Age civilizations to preserve their knowledge in stone before their world was swept away by catastrophe? The geographic distribution of these mysterious construction sites is global. From Lebanon to Peru, from Bolivia to Easter Island, from Malta to Cambodia, we find similar techniques, similar precision, and similar evidence of interrupted work. The consistency across such vast distances suggests either remarkable coincidence or some form of shared knowledge. And this brings us to one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for advanced Ice Age capabilities: the global pattern of architectural and engineering knowledge that appears suddenly in the archaeological record, fully formed rather than showing gradual development. In Egypt, the precision of pyramid construction appears almost from the beginning of the dynastic period. In Peru, sophisticated stonework emerges with. Remember, imagine diving beneath the surface of the ocean and discovering something that shouldn't exist. Vast stone structures, roads, even entire cities, all lying in silent testimony to civilizations that flourished when the sea levels were hundreds of feet lower than today. This isn't just imagination. It's happening right now, as underwater archaeologists make discoveries that challenge everything we thought we knew about human history. Off the coast of India, near the ancient city of Dwarka, divers have found massive stone structures submerged beneath the Arabian Sea. Walls that stretch for hundreds of meters, geometric patterns that suggest human construction, and blocks arranged in ways that seem too regular to be natural formations. Carbon dating of artifacts found at the site suggests these structures could be over 9,000 years old. In Japan, the Yonaguni Monument has sparked decades of debate. This underwater formation features straight edges, right angles, and what appear to be steps, platforms, and even ceremonial areas. While mainstream archaeology insists it's a natural formation, the geometric precision is so exact that it challenges our understanding of what geological processes can create. But here's what might be the most significant underwater discovery of all, and why you should definitely subscribe to hear more about these incredible findings. In the Mediterranean, archaeologists have found Pavlopetri, an entire Bronze Age city preserved beneath the waves off the coast of Greece. Streets, buildings, courtyards, and even pottery have survived underwater for over 4,000 years. Now, if a city from 4,000 years ago can survive beneath the sea, what about cities from 10,000 or 15,000 years ago? The preservation conditions underwater can actually be better than on land. Sediment covers and protects structures. Salt water can preserve organic materials. And the stable underwater environment prevents the erosion and destruction that occurs on the surface. This raises a profound question. How much of human history lies beneath the waves? During the Ice Age, sea levels were 400 feet lower than today. Vast areas of the continental shelf were exposed as dry land, areas larger than entire countries. These would have been prime locations for human settlement. Coastal plains with access deeper and more clearly beneath the waves. But the scale of what remains unexplored is staggering. Recent advances in sonar mapping, underwater robotics, and satellite imaging are beginning to reveal structures on the ocean floor that weren't visible before. Geometric patterns, straight lines, and regular formations that stand out against the natural randomness of the seafloor. Each discovery raises new questions about what else might be hidden beneath the waves. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Some of the most intriguing underwater discoveries aren't being made by archaeologists at all, but by amateur divers, fishermen, and even Google Earth enthusiasts examining satellite images of shallow coastal areas. Off the coast of Cuba, sonar images have revealed what appear to be massive stone structures over half a mile beneath the surface. The formations show straight lines, right angles, and geometric patterns that some researchers interpret as evidence of human construction. The depth suggests these structures, if artificial, would have been built when sea levels were much lower, potentially during the Ice Age. Similarly, off the coast of the Bahamas, divers have found what they call the Bimini Road, a formation of rectangular limestone blocks arranged in straight lines on the ocean floor. While geologists argue these are natural formations, the regular spacing and geometric arrangement continue to puzzle researchers. And in the Pacific, around various island chains, divers regularly report finding stone structures, walls, and even what appear to be roads beneath the waves. Many of these discoveries are in areas that would have been above sea level during the Ice Age. The pattern that emerges from these underwater discoveries is consistent with what we might expect from Ice Age civilizations. The structures are found at depths that correspond to lower sea levels from thousands of years ago. They show evidence of human construction techniques, straight lines, right angles, and regular patterns that are rare in natural formations. And they're located in areas that would have been prime locations for ancient settlements. But perhaps most significantly, these underwater discoveries are changing how we think about the relationship between land and sea in human history. For most of recorded history, we've thought of the ocean as a barrier that separated civilization, our past. That civilization began only 5,000 years ago with the first cities of Mesopotamia, is not the complete story, but only the most recent chapter in a much longer book. Throughout our exploration, we've encountered tantalizing pieces of a puzzle that doesn't quite fit the conventional timeline. Maps that show coastlines from when sea levels were much lower, monuments built by hunter-gatherers with knowledge that seems too advanced for their supposed capabilities, oral traditions that preserve geographical information from landscapes that vanished thousands of years ago, underwater structures that suggest human construction in areas that haven't been above sea level since the Ice Age. None of these pieces of evidence alone proves the existence of advanced Ice Age civilizations, but together they create a pattern that's difficult to ignore. They suggest that human achievement, human knowledge, and human civilization might be far older and more complex than we've been taught to believe. The implications of this possibility are profound. If advanced civilizations did exist during the Ice Age, it means that human history is not a story of steady progress from primitive beginnings to modern complexity. Instead, it might be a story of cycles, of civilizations that rise, flourish, and then fall, leaving only fragments for later peoples to rediscover and build upon. This cyclic view of history helps explain some of the puzzles we've encountered. Why do advanced technologies and knowledge sometimes appear suddenly in the archaeological record without clear predecessors? Why do widely separated cultures share similar architectural techniques and astronomical knowledge? Why do flood myths appear in every corner of the globe with remarkably consistent details? Perhaps these aren't coincidences, but echoes of an earlier chapter in human history, a time when knowledge was more widely shared, when civilizations were more connected, and when human achievement reached heights that were then lost to catastrophe and time. The end of the Ice Age was marked by environmental changes so dramatic that they would challenge any civilization. Rising sea levels that drowned entire continents, catastrophic floods that reshaped landscapes, climate instability that disrupted food sources and forced massive population movements. In such conditions, even the most techniques passed down through generations, in astronomical knowledge preserved in sacred traditions, in navigation skills that allow people to cross vast oceans without instruments. As we've seen, the ocean is where the best evidence for Ice Age civilizations is most likely to be found. Beneath hundreds of feet of water and thousands of years of sediment lie the drowned coastlines where these civilizations would have built their greatest cities. As technology advances and underwater exploration becomes more sophisticated, we may finally be able to explore these submerged landscapes systematically. Each new discovery has the potential to rewrite our understanding of human history. A single well-preserved site, a cache of artifacts, or clear evidence of advanced construction techniques could provide the proof that has so far remained elusive. But even without definitive proof, the question of Ice Age civilizations serves an important purpose. It reminds us that our knowledge of the past is incomplete, and that there may be entire chapters of human achievement that we haven't yet discovered. It encourages us to keep looking, keep questioning, and keep our minds open to possibilities that might challenge our assumptions. The story of humanity is far from finished. Each generation discovers new evidence, develops new technologies, and gains new perspectives on the past. What seems impossible today may become accepted knowledge tomorrow. The mysteries we've explored tonight may one day be solved, revealing truths about our past that are stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. As you drift off to sleep tonight, consider the possibility that the world you know is built on foundations much older and more mysterious than you ever suspected. That beneath the familiar landscapes and seascapes of our planet lie the remains of civilizations that flourished when the world was young and different. And perhaps, in your dreams, you'll walk the drowned streets of Atlantis, sail the ancient seas with Ice Age navigators, or stand in the shadow of monuments built by our forgotten ancestors. For in the realm of sleep and imagination, all possibilities remain open, and the lost civilizations of the Ice Age live on. The greatest discoveries